Lead Girl, the BWEL podcast is your dedicated platform for amplifying the voices of Black women in various roles, whether you're a teacher, school leader, higher educational professional, or educational consultant.
Join us as we honor the stories of remarkable Black women and share insights from our distinctive journeys in education and life.
Tune in as we explore the topics that resonate with us as women, as members of the Black community, and champions in education. Welcome to Lead Girl, the BWEL podcast, where we amplify the voices of Black women in educational leadership.
We are your hosts, Trelane
and Jocelyn.
Good evening, Jocelyn. Happy Sunday. Here we are back again. I'm so excited for this guest and just really interested in this topic, one that we don't talk about probably enough. So definitely looking forward to it. We are talking about leveraging family and community partnerships as an educational leader. And we're diving into the power of the village, how families, churches, neighborhoods, and communities shape spaces where students and schools and leadership in ways that we don't always honor as we should.
You know, I'm with you on the importance of this topic because, it takes a village here. And I'm super excited about our guest today. And so our guest is a school counselor, scholar, consultant, and author whose work challenges schools to rethink how they partner with Black families and communities. Dr. Crystal Clemons is the founder and CEO of Lead Consultants of Our Village Consulting. She has served in school counseling and counselor education for over 15 years. She's an award-winning international speaker, consultant, and advocate for neurodivergent students, something special to me. Dr. Clemons speaking topics include neurodivergent and gifted students, authenticity, K through 12 education, school, family, community engagement, and cultural wealth. Dr. Clemons created the village model of community engagement to bring educators, families, and community partners together to support student success. She's soon releasing a book called It Takes a Village to Raise a Classroom, Black Family Wisdom in Education. And her work reminds us that community knowledge isn't extra, but it's essential. And so we'd like to welcome Dr. Clemons.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So excited to have you. Can you just give us a little bit? That bio is stellar, but can you give us a little bit about like what you're doing right now in education? What does that look like for you on a day-to-day?
Well, on a day-to-day, which could be different from day to day, I am speaking, consulting. I was a full-time school counseling professor. Now I am just adjuncting because I needed the space to do, the other things I've been called to do. So I do adjunct, and about to release this book, which has been, I guess I could call it my third child. I have, two daughters of my own. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. So kind of to you, Jocelyn, you're near and dear to your heart, the neurodiverse students, or my two babies are as well. And so this book is, I would say, maybe my fourth baby, because the dissertation was my firstborn, and my dissertation is almost a legend now. But this book, I'll say, it's the latest work. So preparing to release It Takes a Village to Raise a Classroom, Black Family Wisdom in Education, and that's dropping on Saturday. So the last day of February, last day of Black History Month. I felt it's important to go ahead and drop that, and y'all are the first to get that exclusive. I have not told many people when I'm actually dropping the book.
Woo, woo.
And so I'm dropping it on Saturday.
Hey,
Okay.
awesome. Oh, so excited for you. I can't wait to get my hands on a signed copy. Hint, hint. Not really, just telling you. Anyway, that is wonderful. So proud of you. And just really excited to see what comes of this book, because like I said in the beginning, we really don't talk as much as we should about the family unit, particularly the Black family unit in schools. And
Mhm.
there's so many
Mhm.
different narratives about Black families with Black children in schools, no
Mhm.
matter what kind of school you're in. Let's just be real.
Right, right.
And so I'm really excited to see what you have created. So during our pre-call, which was fantastic, it really got me so pumped up for this episode. You talked about the close knit Black community that you grew up in, and
Mhm.
that you said that they deeply shaped your path in education. So, how did that village influence your work as a school counselor and as a scholar?
Oh Lord, that one question could take up the whole time. So, very briefly, yeah, I'll say where I grew up, where I'm from. I am from the 757. So people don't know what that is. That's the Hampton Roads, Tidewater area, Virginia. And I'm very proud of where I came from. My family's still there. My parents are still there. My husband grew up there, so my mother-in-law's still there. So that is still a very um, intricate part of my life. It's still that area, that town. Um, and so I grew up definitely in a close knit family, close knit community where I had, dad's parents lived 5 minutes away, mom's parents lived 10 minutes away, and I saw both sets every week because mom's dad was the pastor of the church, dad's dad was the head of the deacon board of the same church, and it was a large church. It was a New Hope Church of God in Christ in Norfolk, Virginia, and the street that the church sits on now is actually named after my grandfather, Bishop Herman Clark Sr. So I saw my family, my relatives, all the time, and I thought that was normal. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized, wait, people don't really get this all the time. People don't get to say they see both sets of their grandparents on a weekly basis, multiple times a week.
Mm.
People don't get to say that they see aunts and uncles all the time. People don't get to say these things. They've got cousins on both sides of the family
Right.
that I see all the time. So that in itself, understand. And they were all again at the same church, and the church was not small. And I joke and say like half of the church was related to me. It's a joke, but it's also kind of true. Um, and it wasn't until I really became maybe a young adult that I realized, wait a minute, okay, so who's actually biologically related and who's my play cousin? Who's my play auntie? Like it wasn't until I became really a little bit older that I started to kind of understand. But even in that, because that's the relationships, those are the relationships that were fostered.
Mm,
That even at my big age, 44. I just turned 44 3 weeks ago. My play cousin, we dropped the play. That's my cousin. That's my auntie. That's my uncle, right? Still to this day. And so, um, the way that village shaped me, my actual biological uncle, I'll talk about him. And he'll probably see this. So, hi, Uncle Herman. But Dr. Herman Clark Jr., my mother's older brother, was the principal of a school in Norfolk back in the 80s, early 90s. I was young. I was in like elementary school, maybe. Um, he was principal of a school called, at that time, it was called Bowling Park Elementary School. Now it's called Richard P. Bowling Elementary School. But, mama named him Clay. I'm going to call it Clay. To me, it's still Bowling Park Elementary. And back then, and even maybe a little bit now, in Norfolk, Virginia, if a school or a neighborhood had the word park in it, we knew what that meant. That's the Section 8 housing. That's the Title I schools. That's the hood schools, right? Those majority Black schools,
mm,
the schools that were not expected to succeed.
mm,
And so my uncle was the principal of this school, and they had standardized testing, and they scored higher on this standardized test than the white kids across town. And the school district called my uncle in. He's thinking they finna give him some accolades. They said, "Nah, we think you cheated.
mm, mm,
You
mm,
need you y'all need to do that again." So my uncle likes to say that I am like him, and this is becoming more and more true each day as I think about the audacity that he has and the audacity that I have gleaned from him.
mm,
That he was like, "Oh, you want us to run it back? Bet we'll run it back." They scored higher the second time around, and this became national news.
mm,
In the midst of all of this, they were like, "Well, how did you do it?" And for him, he said, "What do you mean? I went into the communities and I actually spoke with the families that these kids came from. I had no problem going." And again, I said the 80s. So we
mm,
know what was going on in the 80s. That was, the crack epidemic and all that. So like my
mhm,
uncle is in his fine suits going down to the park, walking through, stepping over needles, like going, but he had no fear because
Mm,
to him it was the kids are the point.
mm,
These children and their success, that's the point. But we need to tap in with their families and bring them in because that's the only way that these kids are going to succeed is if when we bring the families in. So he was doing that. In addition to that, I mentioned before my grandfather was the pastor of the church, so that was a natural tap in. My grandfather's very adamant that education is key. So adamant, in fact, that he um, all three of his children had terminal degrees. Of his seven grandchildren, four of us have terminal degrees, with a possible one on the way because my younger brother is contemplating. So, possible one on the way. Um, but and the others don't have it because they don't want it, not because they can't attain it. They just don't really want one. But they have the brilliance as well to have one. So my grandfather and my grandmother very high on education, and so when my uncle said, hey, we need resources, my grandfather had no problem. The church as a whole had no problem pouring into these communities
mm,
where backpack drives, school supplies, all of the things, anything you can name that a school, particularly a school with high need, whatever they needed. And again, it was an easy relationship because he just had to go say, hey dad, but even with that, it's still the model of the church caring for the community.
mhm,
And again, I'm a child. No, I was the same age as these kids that my uncle was a principal of,
mm,
not realizing what I was witnessing.
mm,
And so as I got older, he got promoted to assistant superintendent of Norfolk Public Schools over the community schools. Again, community
mm,
is code for black schools, the hood schools, right? And by this point, I think I'm in middle school, high school. And so he created, my uncle is so creative. He has such a creative mind. He would like write plays. Like we had like church plays and stuff. Like before Medea, it was my uncle. Except he did not star in his own plays. He was the writer and director and all that. My mother tended to be like the star of a lot of stuff because she was the little sister. So she. So there was this one particular play where the play was written by someone else. I don't know who it was written by, but my uncle spiced it up to put his own jazzy touch on it. And my mother was the star of the play. And so they had this play, but he created this community extravaganza that pulled in the entire community. And when I say the community, I'm talking the parents, I'm talking faculty at different schools, no matter the level, elementary, middle, high, right? There was a dance troupe, there was a fashion show, there was all of these things. And every night that the thing was held, it was packed. The house was packed and filled to capacity. And it was like, how dare you say these people won't come out and won't be part of,
mm,
because they are. The point is you have to build a trust with them before they come to you. And
mhm,
I watched growing up, I watched my uncle build trust with these communities, not understanding, not knowing that I was going to be here with y'all, hey y'all, and having this conversation because of my work that really kind of is in so many ways a sequel to his work. So not that his work is done, it's not, but it kind of follows in the train that he built. So yeah, I'll stop there because again I could keep going, but I'll I'll stop
Look,
there.
you got a strong powerhouse that
yeah,
is
Yeah.
really supporting you
seriously.
through a lot of this. I mean, that's just
Hmm.
amazing. I was just sitting listening and thinking about how many of us don't have that level of foundation or support
Hmm.
or access to really be grounded. And so it's such a blessing to hear
Mhm,
how deep rooted your
Yeah.
family is, especially in education. It's not something
Hmm.
we often get to hear. So I'm just excited to hear, and like I want to learn more about was it Uncle Herman or
Yes, Uncle Herman, yes.
Uncle
Or I call
Herman
him Unc.
and your
That's
dad?
Unc to me. Yeah, that's my Unc.
and
Yes.
who knows, we might be related, Clark.
Listen,
Let's
I wasn't
go.
gonna say nothing, but um, since we're here,
I mean, we literally do not know. We never know.
we don't. My great grandparents never said that Sally Clark had a whole heap of kids, and their whole heap of kids had a whole heap of kids, and them whole heap of kids had another whole heap of kids. We never know. We had a family reunion. We had a family reunion last summer while Trelane and I were in Ghana. Was the day of the family reunion.
Yes, I remember you
So I
said
was
that.
planning. I was on the planning committee and I couldn't go, but I got my T-shirt though. So that's what.
At least you got the T-shirt.
I got my
There you
T-shirt.
go. Well, from a system standpoint, where
hmm
do schools structurally fall short at family and community engagement, and what policy or organizational shifts I think are most needed just for that support?
Well, I'll start with this. The school is not the expert of the kids,
Hmm.
and that's been the biggest thing that I've seen is like schools and the folk who work in them think that they're the experts of somebody else's children. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I wish somebody would come tell me they know more about my two children than my husband and I do. No, you don't. Mm-mm. And I had that experience. I mean, on a different level. My youngest was born 3 months prematurely, so she spent 3 months in the NICU, and there were things that the NICU folks were trying to tell me about my child, and I said, no, actually, this is the case for her. This is what it is. And of course, who turned out to be right?
Hmm.
So we can't go in, and this is the issue that I've seen a lot with schools. We cannot go in acting like we know better than somebody's parent about their child and then expecting them to work with you. It doesn't work that way. They're the expert of their own child. They're the expert of their own children. And not just the parents and the families and the grown-ups, the guardians, but the community knows the kids. And I would tell people, even as a school counselor, or I should say a school counseling professor, I'll say that. I would tell my master students in school counseling when they were in their field experience courses, I would say, look, if you want to know about a kid, especially if it's a black child, and you have some inkling that this black child comes from a family of faith and they happen to be Christian, and they come from the black church, you got to be clear about that. They come from the black church. Go down to that church. You're gonna learn more about that child and that family than you ever would calling a mama and asking questions, because now you're stepping into the community. One, two, you're actually seeing where the child comes from. You're getting context on this child. You're getting context on the community, and you're not there to be an expert. You're there to listen, and that's the main problem. Is folks they're not listening. People are not listening. Not only they're not. It's not that. Not just that they're not listening. They're not giving the invitation for folks to share their own expertise. Right? Like you can't. When I tell you it boggles my mind. Don't act like you're the expert of someone else's child. That's my mama bear coming out with that. Like, you're not the expert of somebody else's child. And then expect cooperation. It does not work that way. And I think organizationally and within the structure, right now the structure is set up that way. The structure is set up to be like, well, we need family engagement. Um, well, let's invite them to the school. What have you done to foster the relationship that would make them want to come to the school? Because every time they're coming, you're not honoring their expertise, their beliefs, their thoughts, their feelings. So they don't feel welcome. So they don't trust you. Why would they come over there to you? They don't want to see you. They don't want to talk to you because you've proven that you're not worth talking to. You've proven that you don't want to hear from them. So they're not going to. So structurally, that's one of the main things there is we have to rethink how we do community engagement. It's not so much what's that movie? Is it Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come.
Hmm.
It's the reverse. No, no, no. If you build it, they will come. That's not it. No, you need to go to where they are, meet them where they are. And that way you build the trust. That way you become part of the village, become part of that community. Um, Policy wise, we go ahead. You'll say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so there's just two parts. One is I was in a district where we actually did some of this, and I was
Mm-hmm.
so excited about this and nervous at the same time, right? Because it was just
Mm-hmm.
not a framework that I had operated in, just like you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
going into the community and trying to meet families. And,
Mm-hmm.
of course, I found, what you found so much more, there was so much more ease, and, the
Mm-hmm.
conversations flowed much differently with them while we were outside of the school building context.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about how you respond, and it might be a little bit early, but I feel like it's important. How do you respond to those teachers and school leaders who are wondering and asking the question right now, listening to you, when?
Mhm.
When am I supposed to do this?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to do this when I've got
Mhm.
to stay on top of the lessons? I've got to do the reporting. I've got to keep all of
Mhm.
the trains running. I have X number of kids on behavior plans and IEPs. Like, when am I supposed to go out to the community and have conversations with families? How do you respond to that?
Well, I would respond by saying, look at your own priorities, look at your own structure of your day to day, of your week to week, right? Um, One thing that because I would have whenever I would speak on the village model, I'm never going to talk about the village model community engagement soon, but whenever I speak on this, I would have people say, well, what about going to church? Can I do that? Yes, you can do that. It's okay. You can go to church and don't expect anything. I could tell you what to expect. If you're a visitor, you might get a big old hug, maybe a piece of little peppermint or one of them little strawberry candies or something. You're gonna receive the love because when they understand why you're there, if they understand, oh, you're a teacher at the school, oh, welcome. We'd love to have you here. Thank welcome, welcome, welcome. And then that will make the room for you. And
Mm,
here's the thing, teachers are unfairly bogged down. Let's be clear, it's too much. This testing culture is so stressful
mm,
that it's taken the joy
mm,
out of education for a lot of teachers and faculty,
mhm,
right? Um, and that can be really, really hard to overcome because you have so much to do, because you have all these caseloads and all of the things. The beauty of the community is that when you build those relationships and you invite them in and you go out and it becomes that collaborative relationship, what's going to happen is you're going to find your load lessening a little bit
mm,
because now you're not going to be so worried about this program or that program because community is like, oh, we can help you with that, we can do that, and then oh, that's something off your plate,
mm,
right? And you're building that family and community engagement. And for those who may be listening and say, well, I'm not a church goer, I don't do all that. And that's fine. You don't have to be. Well, where else are the people gathering?
mm,
It doesn't have to be at the church house. Like where else are they gathering? Are there rec basketball games or something? Or is there a park where folks gather to frolic? That is such a word, frolic. But is there a park where people are gathering and having fun and stuff? Like go out there. Make it, don't look at it as a chore. And maybe that's part of it too, is
mm,
they look at it as another box to tick. It's another task. It's another chore. If you
mm,
keep looking at it like that, it's gonna feel burdensome. Instead of, you know what? I heard it's a community cookout over there at this community park. I'm gonna go over there and enjoy myself.
mm,
And then you're immersing yourself in that community. You're getting to meet people. You're getting to do the very thing that you think you don't have time for.
mhm,
So it's a matter of not looking at it as just another box to check off. Like,
mhm,
is it that important to you to get in with the community? Is it that important to you to understand the context and the communities from which these children and families come from? Is it that important to you? And if it is, you'll find a way to structure things around. And then again, look for the fun stuff. You don't have to go and like have formal meetings all the time. Like people tighten up informal meetings. Go have informal interactions.
mhm,
And people tend to talk more freely and they're a little bit more loose and more relaxed in an informal setting. You'll learn a lot more. You'll get the information you seek in an informal setting, probably quicker, a lot quicker actually than you would in a formal setting. So that's what
mm.
I would say to that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's great. Thank you. Mhm. So I inserted a question there, but you had mentioned your village model of community engagement,
Mhm.
and this was your dissertation. So please tell us about this and how can leaders apply it in schools?
Yeah, well, it actually came from my dissertation. So my dissertation was on African American pastors and their perceptions of professional school counseling.
Okay.
Because again, for me, it was my two worlds collide. I've never seen the intersect. So
Mm,
where's the intersect? So that was what I wrote on. But then throughout the years, I would kind of go back to that and be like, are people still not going, like, do they still not see what's happening here?
Mhm.
Um, and then I was thinking, like, hey, it's not just the black church, it's salons and barbershops. It's the Divine Nine. Shout out to my Divine Nine family, right? These are these entities that have been here for hundreds of years, for the longest time. And we've been doing the work in the in-house, so to speak. And the schools act like they don't know what's going on. Well, it's because you haven't bothered to find out. And so, with the village model of community engagement, it's two frameworks to kind of structure things, but then it's three community entities. So, the two frameworks, one is multi tiered systems of support. I told y'all I'm a school counselor at heart, and one thing we do, baby, we love a tier. So, multi-tier systems of support, because then that can help you structure for those who are unfamiliar with multi-tier systems of support. Tier one is everybody. Tier two is a smaller group. Tier three are the babies that need all the love we got for them. And so, um, when you are able to kind of tier to see which kids might need more or less intervention or love, as I'm going to say, then that kind of helps structure things. And then the other framework is cultural wealth capital. I absolutely love talking about cultural wealth capital. I'm gonna plug my YouTube channel, where Our Village Consulting on YouTube. So that is where I talk every week about cultural wealth, some aspect of cultural wealth. And so this cultural wealth came from, or cultural wealth theory came from a scholar named Dr. Terry Yasso. She came up with this about 20 or so years ago, because in peer-reviewed journals and the literature and research, whenever someone talks about minoritized communities, it's always from a lens of lack. What are they lacking? What do they need? It's always from that deficit lens. And that is going back to the question of structure, policy, and all that. When they create rules or whatever for our kids, it's always based on the deficit that they
Mhm.
see,
Mhm.
instead of the strength that's actually there, instead
Mhm.
of the wealth that's actually there. And so there's six forms of wealth, that of cultural wealth, that folks of minoritized communities possess, specifically folks from minoritized communities. Go to my YouTube channel, get all the deets about that, because that will take up a long time to talk about just that by itself. But I use those because, especially cultural wealth theory, really helps us to frame everything from a strengths based perspective.
Mhm.
Because again, when we talk about our kids, it's always from deficit based lens, and then you wonder why it's still not working. Well, it's because you walk around acting like ain't nobody got nothing. That's not how this works, folks. How do you think we made it to this point as a people, as a community? How do you think we made it to this point?
Mhm.
Because we do possess strengths, we do possess wealth in different ways that have sustained us and are continuing to sustain us, right? So that's the strengths based perspective of that. And then the three community entities that have been around since forever, the Black church, which we know really kind of was born out of enslavement, um, is the cornerstone of where all our civil rights leaders came from, the church,
Mhm.
right? The first, in my view, the first major terroristic bombing happened at a black church, with
Mhm.
the 16th Street Baptist Church in Alabama.
Hmm.
Um, Church bombings, the places that they attack for us, because they know that the black church is structural in the black community. We could talk about the issues all day long, but historically, the structure, the cornerstone of the black community is the black church. That's where we were gathering to plan. That's where we were doing all these things. So where did they start? And y'all know who I mean when I say they. Where did they start attacking? It was the church,
Mhm.
physically. Some folk may be old enough to remember the string of black church fires in the 90s. That was so prevalent. That was like a two-part episode on New York Undercover. If folk remember that show, right? Because it was that
Mhm.
serious.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was continuing to happen. And then, of course, we know about the Emmanuel Nine and all of that. They attack what they think will make us crumble.
Mhm.
So that's why we were having all these attacks on the church. But the church is so structural. I'm talking preschools, folks got preschools, there's financial literacy, there's GED programs. Some churches have GED programs. I talk about how, again, I was speaking on my grandfather, Bishop Herman Clark Sr. He was so high on education that whenever, and even my pastor back home in Norfolk, Pastor Kurt T. Houston Senior Gethsemane Community Fellowship Baptist Church. Hey, Pastor. Um, every time it's June, the end of the school year, if you're graduating, you're coming to church wearing your cap and gown. If you are getting promoted, you lining up too. And they play pomp and circumstance on the organ, and you processing, and everybody's making a big deal, woo woo. And then you get a little piece of money, a Bible, certificate, whatever. But the point is to celebrate education and to celebrate our children who are excelling. Um, so I used the black church for that, and then salons and barbershops because who was among the first entrepreneurs in our community. And one thing about black folk, we will keep our hair done. That line gonna be tight. Them edges will be laid. We don't play about and that starts early. The hair starts early, right? And so what we overlook about these entities, the salons and the barbershops, is that how much molding takes place there. And we're not just talking hair. How
Mm,
many conversations are kids hearing?
mm.
Religion, politics. If you're in a barbershop, probably 50 times a week, you're going to hear the same tired conversation about who's the GOAT, MJ or LeBron. The same tired conversation. That really shouldn't even be a conversation because the GOAT is Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Thank you very much. End of story. Moving on. Um, I'll go in on that all day long too. But but a lot of conversations are happening that kids are hearing and they're learning, and the barbers might be talking to the young fellas in this, they're talking to the kids. Some of them, their first job is sweeping up hair, and then they get promoted to be, in a salon, they get promoted to be a shampoo girl. Like, you're learning these entrepreneurial skills, you're learning about life, you're learning that is a place of gathering. And a lot of these communities that may have like warring gangs and stuff, and a lot of places like Chicago, for example, um, barbershops are safe zones in
Mm,
some neighborhoods, right? Because of it's so, I'll put it like this: barbershops and salons are so central to the Black American community that how many movies have been made based in, and the setting is barbershop. Barbershop had how many? One, two, three, right? Three.
mhm.
Barbershop had like three sequels. Then there was Beauty
Yeah.
Shop, and then I mean, there's gonna be a beauty shop scene in something with a black whatever. Listen, because it's central to us, right?
Yeah.
So there's so much that kids are learning, and the health community has figured this out because they'll go down to the barbershop and salon, and they'll be talking to folks about the diseases that plague our community the most, making sure folks are going to get mammograms, making sure that they're getting because we know like colorectal cancer is on the rise, right?
Mm,
And folks, and it's getting younger, like the age that I think insurance will quote unquote start to pay for. And I say quote unquote because I'm pretty sure there's ways around it, but they'll start to pay for colonoscopies at 45. Yet people are dying younger than that from this cancer. So
mm,
people are going there saying, "Hey, you might want to go ahead and do what you got to do to get screened. HIV/AIDS, like, hey, go get tested. Here's the information about this. Diabetes, heart, like." Health workers are going into those places and spaces to discuss the things that affect us the most. Folk running for office, right? Joe Biden was going in there, going to the barbershops, right? Obama was going in the barbershop. Even Kamala Harris went into a barbershop. There's a clip on something about her going to a barbershop. The folks running for office. And then what's his face? Talk about LeBron. He has this whole talk show or whatever that is. What's it called? The Shop, right? Where the setting is a barbershop. And so because that's where folks have these conversations and they're learning, and the kids are there and they're learning, they're absorbing all of this. They'll be quick to go get their hair done. So why aren't the educators going over there too, saying, "Hey, can we talk about how to partner to teach kids entrepreneurial skills? Can we talk about possibly offering internships or jobs? Kids who want their first job, they get old enough to get a worker's permit and they want to go get a job. Okay, well let's find some places that will be willing to hire you.
mhm.
There's that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So all of that, and then the Divine Nine, which I am a very proud member of the Divine Nine, very proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and all of us. I could go on about mine all day, but it's not just mine. It is the collective, and that is what's so beautiful about us. is that yes, we have our individual organizations, and yes, we have different colors, different letters, different mottos, all of that. But the point is still the same. We don't play about our communities and we don't play about our children.
Mm,
There are so many, from scholarships to auxiliary groups to uh matter of fact, just yesterday I am the chairman for my chapter here in Charlottesville, Virginia. um One of our larger initiatives as Alpha Kappa Alpha is something we call the Youth Leadership Institute. And we're targeting middle school kids. And it's just what it sounds like. It's a leadership institute. So I lead mine here in the city of Charlottesville. So we had our meeting yesterday and we were speaking with middle school kids. We're doing vision boards and discussing community service. And they're starting to talk, they're getting community minded, right? Service minded. And this is what we're starting to foster. And again, it's not just mine, but I know all of the organizations have youth programs. And together it's like, what's that in Transformers? What's it called? Megatron or whatever? I've
I can't
slept
remember.
on
It's been a long
Transformers a
time
lot, but
for me.
y'all know what I'm talking about. Where they all get together. Or a better analogy, Avengers Assemble,
Okay.
right? We're like the Avengers, and we will assemble when it comes to our children.
Hmm.
And so with all of the, and then on the topic of education, I tell people if you're in a school building and you have a school faculty and there's more than I would say even if it's like 2% of the faculty are black, and I'm just throwing out a weird number, throw a rock in a school faculty room and there's black people in there, you're gonna hit somebody in the D9 because we run that joint. The D9 is all over education from pre-K all the way through higher ed. We are all over the place. And we know the power of us, but it's sometimes difficult to work within the system and bring our people in when the system is resistant to the influence that we have. Yet with their resistance, they're also confused as to why nothing they're doing is working.
Hmm.
Make it make sense. So in a somewhat nutshell, that is the village model of community engagement. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. So, I'm going to transition us to something that's really important to me. And
Hmm.
one of the things that, like in your bio, you talk about being a neurodivergent educator. I'm a
Hmm.
neurodivergent parent, and I have my own
Same.
personal opinions about the school
Mhm,
system, and more so, I guess, on the African American side of
mhm,
how things are intertwined or supported, and especially coming from a counseling point, I would love to get your perspective.
mhm.
But um, how should schools partner with families better to support neurodivergent children or students?
Number one, the schools have to understand that neurodivergence comes in many shape forms. It doesn't all look the same. And what we would consider some folks think neurodivergent and they automatically, or only, I should say, they only think autism. And I'm like, nah, that's not the only form of neurodivergence that there is. To be very clear, giftedness is a form of neurodivergence. So if we don't understand that at its basic core, that neurodivergence does not just look one way.
Hmm.
It is very broad. And then on top of that, even within the broadness of neurodivergence, Black children are going to present a little bit differently. You're not going to see it. You might see it, a school might see it as disruption rather than neurodivergence or a child acting out neurodivergence, right? Um, I'll give an example of my own child in a way. Um, So my children are twice exceptional. So a lot, and that's another issue. A lot of people don't understand what twice exceptionality is. And that's when someone has a disability and they're gifted. What tends to happen, especially with our children, is the disability is the focus. And we tend to forget that the child also is gifted. And that part of them, that ball tends to get dropped, right? And so, more so speaking to the twice exceptionality piece, my oldest daughter has ADHD and anxiety. And she also skipped kindergarten because she was reading fluently, not just the words, but comprehension at age 3. And so she gets to first grade and she's 5 and she's younger. And she's not just like younger than everybody. Like she won't turn. So, for example, right now she's in the 4th grade. She's 8. Her classmates are turning 10. She won't turn 9 until almost the end of the school year. So she's well aware of that age dynamic there. But when she hit first grade, we started seeing these behaviors that were not like her. Um, it's like, oh, she's not listening, she's not doing this, that, and the third. And my husband and I were like, wait a minute, we know our child. This is something. This is something. Um, Turns out it's ADHD and anxiety. So we're like, okay, we know kind of somewhat what we're dealing with. But also she's gifted. And so with a lot of children, especially with ADHD, they don't always test well. And so you're gonna give the child the Kogat first thing in the morning before her medicine has even kicked in to see if she qualifies for the gifted program. Mm, okay. Um, and then oh, my husband loves it when I tell his story. So we had our meeting for a 504 when my child was in the 2nd grade. We had a meeting to initiate the 504. The following week, we had said we want to meet with where we live here. They call it talent development. We want to meet with talent instead of giftedness. We want to meet with a talent development teacher. So we go to meet with the talent development teacher, and bless her heart, she was about to explain multi-tier systems of support to me. And when she started it, I kind of looked around at the other adults in the room, going, "Oh, y'all didn't tell her who I am, did you?" Okay. So she started, and I said, "Let me stop you there." And I let her know what my expertise was. And I said, "So go ahead and continue. Tell me what you got to say." And she goes, "Oh, so I don't have to explain." No, you don't. Mm-mm. You could tell me how you all enact it here, but you don't have to tell me what it is. I said, as a matter of fact, let me send you a link to an article that I wrote on twice exceptional Black girls in early childhood education. I'm going to go ahead and send you that article for your reference. But go ahead and tell me what you got going on here. And so when she realized, and as when I said, let me stop you there, I heard like my husband's chair shift. And out the corner of my eyes, I said, if I look at him, I'm gonna laugh. And he would sit there like this because it tickles him when I get in that bag. He's like, oh, this is about to get good. I was like, you so messy. But I shared with her the article and she was like, wow, this is so insightful. Um, and I said, so just so we know who we're dealing with here, and I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about my child. She has a disability, yes. We're not going to treat it as a, we're going to give her the accommodation she needs. However, her disability is not a crutch. We will not treat it as that. She is gifted and you will attend to that. You will not label her gifted because, as a formerly labeled gifted child, that's some pressure that her anxiety cannot handle at her young age right now. So we're not going to do that, but you're going to give her services. Here's the thing, I knew to do that. My husband needs to do that. He's a clinical mental health counselor. He has an ADHD certification. We knew how to advocate for our children. How many kids out there are not receiving all of the services that they need because their parents are just unaware? And that's not really the fault of the parents, right? Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. But also if the schools who are supposed to know about the different ways that neurodivergence and twice exceptionality and all that, if the schools are supposed to know how that shows up, and instead they are saying, oh, your child has a disability, they need a IEP or this or that, but they're not paying attention to the fact that, wait a minute, all right, so it seems like they have reading difficulties. Well, they're always disrupting my class. They're always beating on the desk. They're beating on the desk. How are they beating on the desk? Oh, they're making music. So they're musically gifted, but you don't see that. All you hear is a disruption. So how do you reframe that? Do you go to that child and say, "You're making so much noise, get out of my class. Go do this." Is it punitive? Or do you say, "Hey, I see you got this going on. How about this? Let's get through this lesson. And then if we have time at the end, I'll let you go ahead and make your beat." Because now you're making room for that child's gifts. I mean, I told you I'm a church girl. The word says that, your gifts will make room for you. But as an educator, it's also your job to make room for the gifts that your children have. But you have to recognize it when it comes your way and not see everything as a disruption. And that happens too often with our children who are neurodiverse. They don't necessarily see the giftedness of our children. And we know this. If you look at the rates of special education versus gifted education and the student disparities by race in each, because a black child, and I'm gonna say a non-black child, could be displaying the same behaviors. One child is gonna get grace, the other child's gonna get ISS, and because of that, because we don't see, we choose not to see, and that's the prejudice, that's the bias, that's the racism, that's the white supremacy that is embedded in the school system. We're not going to recognize that this child has gifts that need to be nurtured. And so, for example, again, my daughter has been in love with space since the age of 4. And I don't just mean, ooh, ooh, the sun, I want to draw. No, I mean this child will sit to this day, will sit and watch YouTube videos that will name every single moon that Jupiter has, and it's a whole lot of them. And she will sit there and she can name things. At age 4, she's telling me what a dwarf planet is. And I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? A dwarf? The only dwarf I know are the ones that live with Snow White. Like, what you talking about? And she's like, Mommy, Pluto is not a planet. It is a dwarf planet. And she's and I'm going, who are she was 4 years old doing this. So the thing about children with ADHD and a lot of neurodivergent children, when they get focused on something that they enjoy and they love, you can't shake them off of that. This child has been locked in for 5 years. Like she's like, I love space. She wanted to be an astronaut. Then she learned more about black holes and she changed her mind. She said, I'm not trying to get sucked into no black hole. Is there something I can do about space? Still on Earth. I said, baby, we can be an astronomer. That works. But and then my youngest child, that's a whole nother story. She's got speech, issues, and she has some other developmental things going on, but she also can read fluently. Like she's 5 now. She can read. Like she's reading circles around her classmates in pre-K right now, who some of them can't hardly recognize their letters, but she over here with whole books. So it looks different in every way, and especially for our children, I'm always speaking to what are you missing? You want to talk about the deficit lens, what's the school missing? What are you not seeing in these kids? What are you choosing not to see? And when these children display behaviors, and from a counseling perspective, behaviors come from a need. So if a need is not being met and you have a behavior that might be less than desirable, that means the child's need is not being met. So what is it? Right? And one of the issues, I had to move preschools in my youngest child because she was being disruptive in her class, and they just saw her as a problem. So I pulled her out there. My husband, I'm like, yeah, we're done. We're pulling you out of that school because you think her disruption is a problem. I think your inability to differentiate education and give this child the level of rigor she needs, that's the problem because she bored up in here. So they do that to our children quite a bit. That's how you get these discipline rates that go through the roof because they see our children as disruptions rather than, wait a minute, maybe they're bored. One of the examples I like to bring up is the late great Deacon Earl Simmons, known to us hip hop heads as DMX. And he was a deacon too. To be clear, he was a deacon. And uh, he did an interview many, many years ago. And if you've ever heard his story, it is heartbreaking. His mother basically like abandoned him at a boys' home. He had a lot of issues. Someone he looked up to handed him a blunt, what he thought was just a regular, quote unquote, regular blunt, but it was laced with crack, and he got addicted at like a adolescent, as an adolescent. I can't remember his exact age. I want to say like 12 or 13, something like that. But he was at the school, and they said, oh, and I know he had mental health issues, bipolar and all that, but he was disruptive and all the things that they say. DMX's words as an adult were, They couldn't see that I was bright and bored. And I'm paraphrasing. I was really bright, but I was bored, so they just thought I was a disruption, but really I was bored in that class. So because they didn't see his brilliance, they treated him as a problem. And I often wonder how much different would his life could his life have been if the teachers recognized his brilliance instead of seeing him as a problem, right? So that's another subject that's a soapbox for me. So
Yeah.
mm, pull back. I know you got more questions. Pull that
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, that is all of that is so good, and relates so much to me as a leader, and looking at the students that I have had over the years, that I have now, and always thinking about what can we do to support teachers in
Mm,
being able to do what you're asking, what you're saying that we should be doing, right? Is recognizing that brilliance and not necessarily calling, yes, it might be a disruption in that moment, right? But then are we
mhm.
actually digging deeper to try to figure out the why?
Right.
And I don't always think that it's about um, for a lack of educators wanting, right, to
Mhm.
actually do the right thing. The majority
Mhm.
of educators are doing this thing because they really do want to
Absolutely.
see children succeed, right? And so the
Absolutely.
capacity, however, is is
Right.
is where I think we get stuck in our knowledge
Mhm.
gaps, right? And so I think that as a leader, it's so important for us to continue to be doing that learning, but
Mhm.
as school entities, we have to be making sure that teachers are learning how to work with
Right.
neurodivergent students, from those that are on the autism spectrum to those who are gifted. And it is a
Mhm.
wide range. There's so much to know
It's
about
so
each one,
wide.
right?
Yeah.
But we do have a responsibility to learn that stuff because that's who's coming to our schools every day. And it doesn't matter what kind of school you are. I'm in a private school, independent
Exactly.
school, public, urban,
Charter.
suburban, religious schools.
Mhm.
They're coming in all the ice cream flavors, right?
Yep.
So it really is incumbent upon us to pause and say, "Hey, I don't understand what this looks like, and I
Mhm.
need to learn what it looks like. I need to understand it
Exactly.
better so that I can do what I need to do for these children." So
And
it's
everything is
it's
not
a
in the
reminder.
textbook. Yeah,
Say
and
that
everything
again.
is not in the text. Everything is not in the textbook.
True,
It's
true, true,
not.
true.
And I'm like, you can learn about something in your graduate programs, but then you get boots on the ground and it's like, wait, this won't in the book. This was
Oh,
not on page
goodness.
37. No, it was not. No, it
No,
was not.
no. The best training, I've always said, the best training
Mhm.
is right in front of you in the classroom. Like, you're not
Absolutely.
gonna get any better than that, but at the same time, that professional learning is so important. And so wherever
Mhm.
you can get it from, it is important. And part of that professional learning, like you were mentioning earlier, around the village model, is going to the community and finding out,
Mhm.
what are these children like when they're not at school? Because
Mhm.
many of them will present slightly differently when they're not at school. There's different
Exactly.
structures and expectations. The cognitive demand is different. So all of those pieces. But I would love to wrap this up by just asking you, there's lots of, there's teachers listening, leaders, consultants,
Mhm.
etc. So if they could walk away with one strategy or a mindset shift around this
Mhm.
idea of the village model of community engagement, and partnerships, what would you leave them with? What should that be?
I would say, what's your first thought when you look at a student?
Hmm.
What's
Mhm.
your first thought? And I don't care if there are the model student that have, they never gave you no problems because those are the ones that fall through the cracks too.
Mm.
Um, or if it's a child who is a frequent flyer to the AP's office, right? When you see that child, what do you see?
Mm.
What do you see? Do you see the problem or do you see the potential?
Mm.
Do you see, do you think it's just that child or do you see where that child possibly came from?
Mm.
And one of the things I also talk about is, especially when I go deeper into cultural wealth and understanding who Black people actually are in this country, because a lot of it we don't even know. As Black folk, I had to learn more. I learned more going to Ghana than ever being here,
Mm,
and learning how strong, how I hate the word resilient, because you have resilience means you have to be strong in the face of situations that should not cause all of this.
mm,
But because the system is the way that it is, we have to be resilient to push through. And just so happens, resilience capital is one of the forms of cultural wealth. But do you see the community that the child comes from? Do
mhm,
you see the potential bloodline that the child comes from? Because everybody doesn't know. People see me, of course, now as an adult, but like people look at I'll say my children, for example, they don't know that their great grandfather has a street named after him. They don't know that, right? They don't always see where our kids come from, because when they look at our kid, or and they when they look at our kids, they even think that they don't come from much.
mm,
But even if it doesn't look like much, there's so much there. There's so much wealth. And wealth is not financial. That's the other thing. We got to rethink how we look at wealth. Wealth is not always money. Wealth is the love. Wealth is the culture. Wealth
mhm.
is the community. Um, do you see that?
Yeah.
And if you don't see that, that's the first place to start.
Mhm,
And that will start to stretch your capacity a little bit, because yeah, and again, I know all of the mundane tasks that teachers have to do. I'm not negating any of that, because yeah, it's a lot. And I honor that it's a lot, and I understand that it's a lot. But again, if you change the rose colored lens that you're looking through, that's going to help you stretch your capacity. And also, maybe more so for the leaders, provide the space for the teachers to learn,
right.
provide the room for them to learn, provide the opportunities for them to learn. Um, don't be, I mean, as much as you can help it, because I know budget cuts are a thing, but as much as you can help it, professional development is send these folks to conferences if you can afford. And again, I'm saying I know budget cuts are real, but do what you can to provide the opportunities for these folks to learn, and not just your staff or faculty, but yourself.
Right.
Because if the leader doesn't fully understand it, and
Mhm,
and that's another thing that a lot of folks run into, the teachers and this faculty and the staff understand it, but their leader doesn't, and then they run into that barrier.
right.
So the leader themselves has to be able to stretch their own imagination, stretch their own capacity to understand that, what, the community is where I am going to get the most answers, the most understanding, and quite frankly, the most help
Mm,
in
mm,
helping these children and assisting these children to get to where they need to be and to get to where they want to be.
exactly.
Hmm.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This
Thank
has
you.
been so incredibly enriching. So thank you for sharing your stories. You've got an amazing, amazing set of stories to attach to your work and all that you do, and your wisdom. So this has really been a really wonderful reminder that the village has always been educating our
Hmm.
children. And now it's past time for schools
Hmm.
to catch up. It's really
Hmm.
what it is.
Amen. Thank you
Um,
all for having me.
of course. To all our Lead Girl listeners, we hope that our episode today challenged you to rethink what partnership really means and how leadership can honor the communities that shape our students every day. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a leader who's committed to building community centered schools. And don't forget to keep an eye out for Dr. Clemens' upcoming
Mhm.
book, It Takes a Village to Raise a Classroom. And we will have to link that in our show.
All right, and with
Thank
that,
you.
we
Thank
want to
you.
thank you all for listening to Lead Girl, the BWEL podcast, where we amplify the voices of Black women in educational leadership. BWEL is a nonprofit organization open for membership for you to serve and be served. If you are a Black woman in educational leadership, we are looking for you. So become a member or support us by visiting blackwomeneducationleaders.com and follow us on social media on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook.
Tune in for upcoming episodes on a variety of topics that are sure to be relevant to your personal growth and professional practice. We encourage you to give us feedback or request to join our show. Email us at bwellpodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media at leaders_black. See you next time. Until then, lead, girl.
You better lead.
Good night, everyone.